Hanya, thank you very much for your kind introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here, and I thank the organizers of this meeting to give me the chance to discuss with you the role of hydrolysates for allergy prevention. But I want to start to give you some introduction in the prevalence of allergies in the world. 60 million people in Europe, and probably close to half of the European society will have allergies in a few years. In less than 15 years, more than half of the European population will suffer from any of them, and these are data from the EAACI. The problem is that the children are the most affected. Every third child in Europe suffers from an allergy, and the figure is still rising, and up to 40% of children in Australia are suffering. So this is really a burden and a chance for pediatricians to do something. You can see here that in the last decades, the atopic eczema has increased between about 30% and almost 100%, for example, in Latin America. So altogether, about 50% of increase in atopic eczema in the last 2 decades. And this is not only, this is not only true for atopic eczema, but also, as you can see here, for asthma and allergic rhinitis, and it is, allergy is really a modern-day epidemic. Nowadays, 10 to 30% have hay fever, 10 to 15% have eczema, 5% to 10% have asthma, and 4% have proven food allergy. So why do we need to prevent allergy? These are the international numbers, but allergy sufferers have a lower quality of life. And if you imagine a child with rhinitis who can't sleep through the night, he loses school skills and all that, and not only the child, but also the parents. Allergy accounts for 6% of general practitioner consultations and about 10% of the prescribing budget. No cure is available except, in some cases, immunotherapy. And atopic eczema, asthma, and allergy develop early, and prevention may actually have a long-term effect until the end of the life. So what can we do? You all know that there are different strategies: primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention are measures taken to be taken in children who are still healthy. And for example, environmental measures like avoidance of prenatal and postnatal tobacco smoke exposure is a primary prevention for all children. Not only asthma, but also sensitization is reduced in those children where tobacco smoke is avoided. Nutritional intervention in the first months of life is also a primary prevention, and I'm going to talk about that later, but primary prevention up to now is only for primary nutritional interventions, up to now only for children at risk. Secondary and tertiary prevention, for example, allergen immunotherapy, is secondary prevention. That means the children have already, in this case, allergic rhinitis, and by immunotherapy, the following asthma is prevented, but also new sensitization is prevented. Therefore, it is not only, it is a secondary prevention, but also a tertiary prevention because it's treated the allergic rhinitis. And tertiary prevention are just drugs and a good therapy. Now, I'm talking about nutritional intervention for allergy prevention. What possibilities do we have? It's breastfeeding as the gold standard for for childhood nutrition. The data are a little bit conflicting on the allergy prevention by breastfeeding, but I'm not talking about this today. I'm going to talk about the cow's milk protein hydrolysates. Of importance is also the time and the introduction and the diversity of complementary foods. This we can touch a little bit later. And another point was immunonutrients, but Hanya had talked wonderfully on the possibility of allergy prevention with probiotics. Now, you all know that the definition of cow's milk protein hydrolysates is they have a reduced antigenicity. We have extensively and partially hydrolyzed formulas, and the differentiation is mainly on the molecular weight profile. Extensively hydrolyzed should not contain peptides larger than 1.5 kilodaltons, and of course no intact proteins. Partially hydrolyzed formulas have numerous peptides of more than 4 kilodaltons. Both partially and extensively hydrolyzed formulas have been studied in several studies with regard to their ability to prevent atopic diseases. The indication for the use of hydrolyzed formulas is up to now children at risk who need supplementation to breastfeeding in the first 4 months of life. And it's very important that they are not compared to breast milk, but to a regular cow's milk formula. The question is how to identify children at risk. And you all know probably the Atopy family history score, because we know that atopy in the family is up to now the best predictor for allergy in the child. And it is divided in the atopy in mother, father, or biological sibling, and then differentiated in proven, suspected, or just non-allergy. This score is 2 points for medically confirmed allergic diseases in the mother, father, or sibling. 1 point means it's medically unconfirmed but strongly suspected allergic disease, and 0 point, of course, is no allergy. And if the family score is at least 1, then there is a risk for the child to be allergic themselves, and prevention measures are recommended. Now, as we have partially and extensively hydrolyzed formulas, the question is what to use. When we started with the GENIE study in 1995, the scientific society was divided in 2 groups. One group said, well, if you want to avoid the development of sensitization and allergic diseases, don't give any allergen, so an extensively hydrolyzed formula, then you don't have an immunological response and you avoid the disease. The other group said, well, this is not true. We believe that you need a certain amount of antigen to induce oral tolerance and by that prevent atopic sensitization and disease. The question is which amount of reduction is the best. This was the basis for the GENIE study, and you probably all heard of it. The GENIE study, GENIE stands for German Infant Nutritional Intervention Program. It is a prospective, randomized, double-blind study, double-blind until 3 years. And the aim was to investigate the allergy preventive effect of 3 different hydrolysates compared to a regular cow's milk formula. And we included in this part of the study 2,252 children at risk. We had a very good epidemiologist in our team, and they said, well, if you recruit the mothers, recruit please everybody you can get. So we had an observational part as well, which comprised of 1/3 of children who was born with a family history, and 2/3 with no family risk. But I'm talking about that later. So the formulas were blinded. We used identical tins identical tins and had 4 letters for each kind of formula to make the identification even more difficult. We used a partially hydrolyzed whey formula. This is the Nestle product, Biba HA or NAN-HA, which is the same. An extensively hydrolyzed whey formula, an extensively hydrolyzed casein formula, and compared those to the regular cow's milk formula. These are the instruments. The intervention group was regularly seen and had physical examinations in the first 3 years, as shown here. We had structured interviews and lots of questionnaires. We almost asked everything. Then we followed them until 1 year very regularly, then at 3 years, 6 years, 10 years, and now at 15 years. From 1 year on, or from 6 months onwards, the observational group underwent the same physical examination and questionnaires. It is important, I think, that the feeding characteristics were absolutely the same in the 4 study groups. We had an equal distribution of the formulas to all 2,252 children. There was an equal number of infants who were fed exclusively breastfed, because our recommendation was to the mothers was exclusive breastfeeding for 4 months, and only if that is not possible, then give the randomized study formula. We also had an equal number of infants in the groups who were exclusively fed with the study formula. The time of onset of feeding the study formula was the same in the study groups, and the duration of feeding with formula was the same. So a really equal distribution. You may have seen this slide, which was our first important slide. It shows that after 1 year, 2 formulas, the extensively hydrolyzed casein formula and the partial hydrolyzed whey formula, had significantly less atopic eczema than those children in the group who received either cow's milk or the extensively hydrolyzed whey formula. After one year, the increase in the 4 groups was rather the same. And this is a slide that actually confirmed data from Ivan van den Plas, who saw that after 6 months in a study where he compared cow's milk formula to partial hydrolyzed whey formula, he saw that the scissors turned out until 6 months, and then the increase was similar in both groups. And we saw absolutely the same. So what does it mean? It means that if you want to do intervention with a formula, you have to do that early, and it is probably in the first 4 to 6 months. Sadly, we didn't check at 6 months, but only the first time at 1 year. Now, just to show you, it is just the atopic eczema that was significantly reduced in these 2 study groups. The asthma or wheezing at that age was similar in the groups. There was no effect on that. We went on from 3 to 6 years, and you can see that the increase goes parallel up to 6 years. And if you want to know the degree of reduction of atopic eczema, it's shown here. You can see that at 6 years, the red signs, the reduction was 45% with the extensively hydrolyzed casein formula on the right, with 36% with the partial hydrolyzed whey formula on the left, and only 26% and just significant with the extensive hydrolyzed whey formula. We went on to 10 years, and the situation is the same, although the curves are flattening in all 4 study groups now. The reduction here was in 33% in the partial hydrolyzed whey formula group and 42% in the extensively hydrolyzed casein group for atopic eczema. And Hanya, in her very clear, wonderful way, just made this slide showing that allergic manifestation, which is one of eczema, asthma, or allergic rhinitis, was significantly reduced in these two groups, not in the extensively hydrolyzed whey formula group. But this was mainly based on the effect on atopic eczema, and, what is important, no significant effect on asthma. This is also a slide which I got from Hanya. She looked at the number needed to treat, and you are in favor of number needed to treat. We saw that before. And the number needed to treat for the two formula groups was around 12, just to avoid one case of atopic eczema, compared to 100 to 400 patients treated with statins to avoid myocardial infarction, 50 patients treated with vitamin D for one case to prevent hip fractures, and 40 patients should be treated with aspirin for cardiovascular protection. So the number 12 is really a very, very high number. So to summarize the Gini study until 10 years, very short answer. Early onset of effect, probably 4 to 6 months. The risk reduction for atopic eczema until 6 years is 26, 36, and 45% for the three formulas. And it's almost the same still at 10 years, with 42% for extensive hydrolyzed casein, 33% for the partial hydrolyzed whey formula, and only 23% at not significant for the extensively hydrolyzed whey formula. What is important is that there was no rebound effect. When we started the study, they said, well, it may be that you postpone the onset of atopic eczema, but probably you will have a rebound effect, which is an unproportional effect after a certain while. And this was up to 10 years not the case. But there was no significant effect on respiratory allergies. Now, I told you before that we also had this observational group. And in this group, the parents could feed the child what they wanted. They could breastfeed as long as they wanted, and could give whatever formula they decided to do so. So what we did then is, if you can see that here, we took, from the observational group, we took those with a family history of atopy and those with no family history of atopy, but all these children were breastfed and supplemented with any formula chosen by the parents. And what you see is these are the children in the non-intervention group with a negative family history, and the incidence of eczema was about 15%. The black line are those children from the non-intervention group with a family history, also fed with any formula chosen by the parents. And what you then see is that the extensively hydrolyzed casein and the partially hydrolyzed whey formula, and to a very low extent also the extensively hydrolyzed whey formula, they reduced considerably the genetic or the effect of the positive family history. That means what Mike Posner showed this morning, there is an interaction between genetic and the nutritional intervention. The reduction was strongest with the extensively hydrolyzed casein, almost to a non-significant effect to those with no family history. And that was followed by the partial hydrolyzed whey and the extensively hydrolyzed whey. And I think this is a very important message if you see that those children who were on the cow's milk formula group and those who changed the formulas in between, in those groups, the risk was increased. So the message is, if you have a child with a positive family history who cannot be breastfed for 4 months, don't give a cow's milk formula, but a HA formula, in hydrolyzed formula. Hanya also did a meta-analysis on the effect of partial hydrolyzed whey formula on atopic eczema, and she could see that the reduction after 1 year in these 3 studies was around 50% reduction of atopic eczema, and this was, she followed that these studies until 3 years, and at 3 years there was still a reduction of atopic eczema of 38%. But what she also did was she compared the effect of the partial hydrolyzed whey formula and the extensive hydrolyzed casein formula in those few studies where both types of formulas were studied in the same trial. And she could at no time point find a significant difference between the effects of these 2 formulas, although it seems that the effect of the casein is always a little bit stronger. Now the question is, how is the situation, for example, in Germany? A survey was done in 2009 to find out how parents actually feed their children. And these data come from the MAS, multi-center asthma study in Germany. 3/3 of the children had a family risk and should be fed with a HA formula, and 66% had no risk. And what you can see is that only 10% of those 30% children, that means 1/3 of these children actually received an HA formula, and 2/3 received regular cow's milk formula. So this is something very important, I think, because it shows that we pediatricians should be much more able to transfer our knowledge and our findings into the normal population. There is another question, and that is, should we only treat children at risk with an HA formula, or should we use, for example, a partial hydrolyzed whey formula in all children? This is a study by Susanne Halken from Denmark. She took 100 children. 70 of these children had no family risk. 25% had a monoparental risk, the mother or father or sibling, and only 5 of them had a biparental risk. The probability for later allergy was 15, 30, and 60 in these groups, and the absolute number of children who developed allergy was 11 in those children with no family risk, 8 in those with a monoparental risk, and 3 in those children with a biparental risk. So 50% of the children who developed an allergy came from a family with no atopy. So they had no family risk. And this, I think, we should think about that, whether we should change the habits, but we can't recommend it because there are no data. We just looked at our Gini cohort of almost 6,000 children, and we saw that in those children with no family risk at birth, the parents, one or both of the parents, developed an allergy later. And in these children who had no risk at birth, but a risk later on in the parents, they also developed to a very high percentage an allergy. And this is interesting because that it says that the disposition in the parents is a risk factor independent on whether they have the allergy already at birth of the child or later on. Cost effectiveness is, of course, a very important thing. The annual cost of atopic dermatitis in Europe is estimated by 18 billion euros. The total expenditure for atopic dermatitis in the UK is 521 million, And in Germany, it has been estimated that the total amount of cost for atopic dermatitis is 1.2 to 3.5 billion. So this is really a burden on the society and on the insurances. And therefore, we did, one of our team did a cost effectiveness analysis and looked at the cost for the society and the cost for the insurances. And they could find that in the first year and in the sixth year, both nutramicin and the extensive hydrolyzed casein and the partial hydrolyzed whey formula were either cost-effective or even cost savings. And for both the society and the insurance perspective, the partial hydrolyzed whey is always slightly better than the extensively hydrolyzed casein. So we also looked at the physical development, which is of course important, and we could see that in boys and in girls up to 10 years, I think this slide is up to 6 years, but it's the same up to 10 years, there was no difference between the groups in the development of the body mass index, and there was also included the breastfed children, so no differences between the groups. There was in the extensive hydrolyzed casein group in the first 44 or 48 weeks of life, there was a slight reduction in the weight in the weight development, but not in the height development. And after that, there was no difference at all up to 10 years. So to summarize the role of hydrolysates in allergy prevention, I think the hydrolysates have their place in primary allergy prevention for children at risk exclusively or as supplement to breastfeeding in the first 4 to 6 months of life. The effect is primarily on the reduction of atopic eczema up to 10 years, but there is also a but, of course. There is no significant effect on respiratory allergies up to now. We don't know the mechanism. Is it the reduction of allergenicity? And if it is that, what is the correct or the best dose? Or is it oral tolerance induction through the generation of tolerogenic epitopes by the hydrolyzing process? And what is, I think, most important, and I think I could show this with the Gini data, each hydrolysate has a differential effect. That means one hydrolysate cannot or is not equal to the other one, and they are not exchangeable. And that means, as with the probiotics, one should only use hydrolysates with a documented efficacy and documented in a randomized trial. And last but not least, hydrolysate formulas are effective in preventing eczema and possibly cow's milk allergy as well. The evidence is high quality, it's cost effective, and no harm has been demonstrated yet. So this is my last slide. Just want to show that in almost all guidelines on feeding children at risk, it shows, or the Gini data are included in the recommendations. Breastfeeding at least 4 months for all children, this is for sure, and no dietary restrictions for the pregnant and lactating mother. I did not talk about that. But cow's milk protein hydrolysates in children at risk, a partial or an extensive hydrolyzed, exclusive or a supplement if breastfeeding is not enough, but only with a documented, with the efficacy documented formula. Complementary feeding, I didn't talk about that, but this is very easy nowadays, not before the end of the 4th month. Introduction of food that is nutritional-wise adequate for the child in the beginning with the 5th month, and the prolongation of inducing weaning food beyond the 6 months has no more preventive effect. I think this is important, so it's very easy nowadays to feed the child. And by this, I would like to thank the families and the participants of this study for their continuous participation. I want to thank the Genie team and the funding. It was a study in the first 3 years paid by the ministry and not by the companies. And by this, I would like to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you a lot. I don't know whether you noticed that the study started in 1995, which means that we now celebrate 20 years of the Genie study.
So the 15 years examination are finished, and we hope that the paper will be accepted in the next 2 or 3 months. So they are on the way, but I can't talk
to JPGN.
Oh well, if they don't take me, I come to you.
Okay, questions, comments? Okay, yeah. Anja.
Anja Chmielewska from Poland. Thank you very much for your very nice presentation. It's always impressive to see a cohort of children being followed for 10 or 15 years. It really makes a great impression. And I would like to ask you for a little comment about the difference in efficacy in prevention of allergy between the formulas. It's always, I'm always thinking, why exclusively whey hydrolyzed why extensively whey hydrolyzed is worse than partially whey hydrolyzed formula?
This is actually something which we didn't understand at the beginning, and we thought, well, maybe we mixed something up, but we didn't, and we had the formulas analyzed because we didn't understand it. We also sent all the formulas to Hugh Sampson in the States, who is the god in food allergy. So he also didn't know what it is, and it is probably, or the only explanation is that the hydrolyzing process creates peptides who are either more tolerogenic than, for example, those in the extensive hydrolyzed whey formula. And as far as I know, there is a study on the way that looked at different partial hydrolyzed formulas, showing that only very small differences in the sequence of the amino acids is actually responsible for a differential effect. So this must be this is the explanation why the partial hydrolyzed whey formula is more effective than the extensively hydrolyzed whey formula.
Because of the time constraints, we have question for one more questions. Yes, please.
As we know that over past 30 years, there was probably 5-fold increase in atopic dermatitis. So probably we will have, again, 5-fold increase in next 10 years. So probably all our newborns are in fact at risk of development atopic dermatitis, not only those who have parents who admit that they are allergic, because sometimes, you know, the parents come to the office and you clearly see that they have allergy stigmas like allergic shyness or this Dania Morgan line, and you ask if you are allergic, and they say no, but apparently they are, or they are they have the genetically determined tendency. But apart of all this philosophy, do you think that it would be reasonable to recommend all children to use partially hydrolyzed formula instead of giving them this bolus of allergens like the formula having intact cow's milk?
Yeah.
Short answer.
Yeah, short answer. I think it is very logical, but we can't recommend it up to now because we don't have data. But I think it would be a very good idea.
Excellent. I'm sorry I will stop the discussion, but we can continue the discussion on the boat. Andrea,
Okay.
you will be there.
Yes.